So this is the last little bit of work that I'm going to do before I actually take off for the weekend. But I've really been enjoying reading The Tiger Rising, not just this time around, but for years. I love this book so much, and I think for me, it's going to do good for my heart if I end our school week by reading to you for a little bit. So we are already on chapter 16. Rob sat out on the curb in front of the motel room and waited for Sistine to come back from using the phone. He had her green dress wrapped in a grocery bag. He had tried to fold the dress up neatly, but folding a dress turned out to be an impossible task, and he finally gave up. Now he held the bag out and away from him so that the grease from the medicine on his legs would not stain it. He was relieved when Sistine finally walked toward him out of the darkness. "Hey," he said. "Hi." She sat down on the steps next to him. "How come you don't have a phone?" Rob shrugged. "Ain't got nobody to call, I guess." "My mother's coming to get me," Sistine said. Rob nodded. "Here's your dress." He handed her the bag. Sistine took it, then tilted her head to look up at the sky. Rob looked too. The clouds had shifted, and there were clear patches where the stars shone through. "Oh, I can see the Big Dipper," Sistine said. "I like looking up at things. So do my mom and dad. That's how they met. They were both looking up at the ceiling in the Sistine Chapel, and then they weren't watching where they were going and they bumped into each other. That's why I'm named Sistine." "I like your name," said Rob shyly. "I've seen the Sistine ceiling, too," she said. "They took me there last year." Before Bridget. When they were still in love. "Does it look like the pictures?" Rob asked. "Better," said Sistine. "It's like, I don't know. It's like looking at fireworks, kind of." "Oh," said Rob. "Maybe we could go to Italy sometime, and I could show you." "That'd be all right," said Rob. He smiled into the darkness. "That tiger can't look up at the stars," said Sistine, her voice getting hard. "He's got that piece of wood over his head. He can't look up at all. We've got to let him go." Rob was silent. He was hoping that if he didn't answer her, she might go back to talking about the Sistine ceiling. "How did your mother die?" she asked suddenly. Rob sighed. He knew there was no point in trying to not answer. "Cancer," he said. "What was her name?" "I ain't supposed to talk about her," said Rob, closing his eyes to the stars and concentrating instead on his suitcase, working hard to keep it closed. "Why not?" said Sistine. "Because my dad said it don't do no good to talk about it. He said she's gone and she ain't coming back. That's why we moved here from Jacksonville, because everybody always wanted to talk about her. We moved down here to get on with things." There was the crunch of gravel. Rob opened his eyes in time to see the headlights of a car sweep over them. "That's my mother," said Sistine. She stood up. "Quick," she said, "tell me your mother's name." I wonder if he's going to. Rob shook his head. "Say it," she demanded. "Caroline," Rob said softly, cracking his suitcase open and letting the words slip out. Sistine gave him another businesslike nod of her head. "Okay," she said. "I'll come back tomorrow, and we'll make our plans for letting the tiger go." "Sissy," called a voice. "Baby, what in the world? What in the world are you doing out here?" Sistine's mother got out of the car and came walking toward them. She had on high heels, and she wobbled as she walked in the gravel parking lot of the Kentucky Star. Her hair was a lighter shade of yellow than Sistine's and piled up high. When she turned her head, Rob recognized Sistine's profile, her sharp chin and pointed nose, but the mouth was different, tighter. "Good Lord," said Mrs. Bailey to Sistine. "What have you got on?" "Clothes," said Sistine. "Sissy, you look like a hobo. Get in the car. She tapped her high-heeled foot on the gravel. So they use the word hobo there, and a hobo is like a homeless person. Sistine didn't move. She stood beside Rob. Well, her mother said when Sistine didn't move, you must be Rob. What's your last name, Rob? Horton, said Rob. Horton, said Mrs. Bailey. Horton, are you related to Selden Horton, the congressman? No, ma'am, said Rob. I don't think so. Mrs. Bailey's eyes flicked away from him and back to Sistine. Baby, please get in the car. When Sistine didn't move, Mrs. Bailey sighed and looked back at Rob again. She won't listen to a word I say, Mrs. Bailey told him. Her father's the only one she'll listen to. And under her breath she muttered, her father the lawyer. Sistine growled somewhere deep in her throat and stalked to the car and got in and slammed the door. You're the liar, she shouted back from the back seat of the car. You're the one who lies.